Report.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to the Krypton Report.
And you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird.
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Supergirl.
And for all of you Amazon.com shoppers, go to SouthgateMediaGroup.com. There's an Amazon login portal there, and just do your shopping. And portions of your shopping go to help support Southgate Media. Welcome to the Krypton Report, the early morning Kryptonian, all things Krypton podcast. It is I, your host, Superman of Blue, Tyler, and with me, my ever faithful Superman of Red. Say hello, my fellow morning traveler.
Hello.
Hey, James. And with us...
Early morning.
And with us, I guess this makes this episode the Last Son of Krypton Report podcast. We have Connor from the House of L from the Last Sons of Krypton Report. Or the Last Sons of Krypton. We just combined it.
Hey. Yeah. Thanks very much for having me on, guys.
Of course. Always. This is kind of a cool episode. We're just kind of just talking like things to do, more to record during our time of home isolation and solitude. And
I was I've just been bored and miserable, and I'm like, hey, let's see if James and Tyler want to chat.
Always up for chatting, and we decided on an issue that we've been wanting to review for a while, and it's a perfect time as any. But Action Comics 252. And guys, what's significant about Action Comics 252?
Well, it's the first appearance of Metallo.
It is.
And also the first appearance of Supergirl.
Yes, that's the big one.
It's interesting how...
I think it's big for both of them, really. I mean,
they're both
Metallo's lasted this long, and Supergirl, she's been in and out for years. But she's big these days since she's had a show for 6 seasons.
Yeah.
I always feel like Supergirl, it's the
5 seasons. 6 is next season. My bad. But she did get renewed.
Exactly. I always feel like Supergirl is kind of the short end of the stick with comics sometimes because they have her, then they take her out, and they put her back, and her books run for short arcs, and they do like tragic stories with her. So it's always interesting to see the humble beginnings of these characters.
Yeah.
Especially Metallo, because this Metallo it's a little different than what we're used to. But Connor, you're our guest. Do you want to take the lead here, and we'll start discussing about Metallo?
Sure. So are we... I guess we didn't really talk about this earlier. Are we going to do like a synopsis and then talk about it? Or because there is one on the wiki.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. I'll read out the synopsis then, and this is just for the Metallo story, which is somehow the same length as the Supergirl synopsis, despite it being a lot longer. But anyway, so the title of the story is called The Menace of Metallo. It was written by Robert Bernstein and penciled by the legendary Al Plastino and inked by Al Plastino, with the editor being Mort Weisinger. So John Corbin is an unscrupulous reporter that works in the Metropolis area. Aside from his mustache, Corbin is practically the splitting image of Superman. While driving his car, Corbin gets into a terrible accident and is nearly killed. His broken body is taken to the laboratory of Professor Veidt, who replaces Corbin's falling limbs with a super-strong metallic alloy. He replaces his heart with a surrogate pump made of uranium and covers the endoskeleton with a foam latex sheath resembling human skin. The operation is a success, but soon after, Professor Vale suffers from a mild stroke. Dubbed Metallo, Corbin begins his new life, a life of crime. Metallo's uranium heart will only last for 1 day before it needs to be replaced, so Metallo begins to breaking into various facilities to steal more uranium. Whenever he feels his uranium store is running low, Metallo becomes weak and dizzy. Corbin gets a job at the Daily Planet and begins courting Lois Lane. Lois is enamored with Corbin due to his physical resemblance to Superman, a fact that invariably irritates Clark Kent. Professor Vale, meanwhile, discovers that green kryptonite can work just as effectively at powering Metallo as uranium, but with the added benefit that it would no longer need to be recharged. Metallo steals a kryptonite rock from a local expedition hall and has Vale implanted into his chest. Metallo learns that the kryptonite can also destroy Superman, and certain that Superman will likely try to arrest him for his recent crimes, Metallo decides to use the power of his kryptonite heart to strike the first blow against the Man of Steel. He baits a trap for Superman, but Superman manages to avoid exposure to kryptonite and pursues Metallo. He chases him back to Lois Lane's apartment when suddenly Metallo begins to feel weak. What neither Vale or Metallo realize is that the kryptonite had been used to power his heart was actually fake. It was nothing more than an ordinary rock painted green to resemble kryptonite. Unable to recharge himself, Metallo falls over dead from a heart attack. So the synopsis wasn't actually 100% accurate, but it was close enough. He does die at the end, which I find quite amusing.
Especially Superman's pun that he gives at the very end.
Yeah.
No, Inspector, he was dead wrong.
Oh, that's Superman.
I mean,
right?
I thought this was pretty interesting.
Kind of making a joke of a villain's death. Doesn't seem very Superman, does it?
It doesn't, but it does happen all the time back in the good old days. I remember, I think there's a lot of villains. I think Lex Luthor's first appearance, he pretty much died at the end. But they always come back when they're deemed, like, popular, I guess. But Metallo's, like, a bit deader than most first villain appearances because, like, his body's just there. He doesn't disappear in an explosion or anything.
Well, what I think is interesting about Metallo straight up from this first appearance is, over time, Metallo's become, when you think of Metallo, he's John Corbin, blonde, military man.
Yeah.
And I remember watching Smallville, and they brought him in, and he was a reporter.
Yeah, they kept this sort of origin.
And I was like, oh, that's odd. And then I learned that was his origin.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like, that's pretty, like, that's really cool. Like, you think about, because we always, like, my first introduction to the character I can remember is Superman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
With
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my first introduction to the character. The animated series, his little stint on Lois and Clark. Then, of course, Brian Austin Green on Smallville. This is actually the first time I've read his first appearance. I didn't know it was in 252 as well with Supergirl.
Yeah.
But just the story, the uranium heart lasting a day, him crashing and the scientists finding him that has this experimental procedure that will save his life and turn him into somewhat of a cyborg, a robot. But how he automatically is just he has the strength and the ability to deflect bullets, and how he just basically straight turns to a life of crime.
Yeah, I guess.
Man,
he's just not a very good person.
That's the part I kind of find interesting because, like, considering when this was made, I think, it was 1950. No, 59. Okay, so the comics code wasn't as strict, but it was still there, so it's like the fact that he has to get uranium every 24 hours to survive is actually, like, a pretty justifiable excuse for stealing uranium.
Yes.
He's just fighting for survival, but they have to make him bad because otherwise he would be too sympathetic for a villain, I think. The story starts off with him saying that, like, he killed someone but made it look like a suicide, just so it lets you know that this guy is super bad, to begin with. So, and that's generally the way it is with Metallo. He's more tragic sometimes, I guess. like especially the military kind of stuff. But I also like the idea of we don't really have any reporters that are supervillains.
Yeah.
But I think the military thing is also really good, so I like both kind of versions.
Yeah, I mean,
Say they're mostly sleazy. He's a villain, and then now you got Robinson Good as the Red Cloud.
Yeah, that's true. We do have her. Although she's not really a villain anymore, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the last time I saw her, she kind of she didn't she had the opportunity to kill Superman or whatever, and she kind of went against Lex and Leviathan and didn't do what she was supposed to do.
Just a minor plug. We have covered all of that on LSK if people want to listen to me get really exhausted with that whole arc.
Well, they're in, what are they in? Issue, what issue just came out? And
1000 and,
121, maybe?
I think so.
Yeah, 121. So she showed up in in issue 1 and still don't even know where she came from in issue 21. Talk about dragging it out.
Yeah, I thought the arc that introduced her was good, like 1001 to 1006.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was good, but it's kind of been downhill from there. And I don't like the idea of her turning into like not a villain. No,
it was similar with the Rogolzar thing. Like, it's interesting for the first handful of issues, and then it just tried to build, and they but without giving answers, just kind of stretched it out.
Yeah, the Rogolzar thing, I will never forget how mishandled that was, and how he just seemed to stop caring about it after the first 6 issues. And apparently he pawns off that plot line to Supergirl.
Yep.
So if you want to find out all the answers, you have to read Supergirl. So just reading Superman, I was so confused when all of a sudden it went, oh, blah, 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 this, Jor-El was killed all of a sudden again, and Rogolzar.
Yeah, I picked up the first trade of World Killers or Killer of Worlds, I forget the name of it. I picked up the first trade of the Supergirl stuff, where it picked up right after it.
Yeah.
When she goes off-world to discover the plot behind it.
And there was nothing in the Superman titles that really indicated that that's what was happening. So I didn't actually know it was really being covered in Supergirl.
Yep.
So I guess I got screwed.
Yeah, I decided to follow when it all started, because after Action 1000, I started picking up individual issues, and I just started picking up anything with a Kryptonian in it. So, or for the most part, Superman, Action, Supergirl, Young Justice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I heard Young Justice is not bad.
No, his Young Justice isn't bad. He's definitely putting a bit more focus in the Wonder Comics line that they've got going on over there with his Young Justice and his character Naomi. And
I remember when Naomi showed up in Action and everything else stopped to a screeching halt, so he could show her off.
Yeah, and they plugged her in. Yep, she's in Action. They plugged her into Young Justice, and all of it, kind of everything he was doing had to come together to keep her there.
Yeah, I mean, everything Bendis is infamous for, he's currently doing again at DC. Well, it was a promising start. He's just sort of gone back to his old habits of he makes his own characters and then just shoves them in everywhere. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just sitting here looking at stuff while you guys were chit-chatting.
Yeah.
And Metallo is another one of those characters that suffers from really no consistent look other than just a green heart. Like, there's some that are really like cyborgy. There's some that's more like a mech suit.
Yeah.
You know, just recently reading Jeff Johns' Superman's Secret Origins. It has a Metallo that looks ridiculous, which is a version that was in the comics before, where he's got like a orangish green suit with a green mask, and and then I recently read Superman Birthright, and Metallo is different looking in that. I mean, every kind of version has just this different look for Metallo. There's no definitive look.
Yeah. I guess that's one of John's things. Is he's in love with particular versions of stuff, so he'll always shove it in there. And I'm guessing he was very infatuated with the early Metallo, which is why he just brought it back. But generally, I feel like he's like a Terminator-looking thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you think Metallo, that's probably the first thing that's going to pop to most people's minds if they know about Metallo. I think that's the closest we have to a definitive version, but we don't really have one. Not like, you know, other villains like Bizarro or Mr. McSpitlick, who generally have one distinct look.
Yeah. And, you know,
every time I think of Metallo, I think of the endoskeleton. Yeah.
I think more like the animated series style, because even like live action versions of Metallo, like we have John Corbin, but you were talking about sympathetic. I think that's definitely the Smallville version, because he was on several episodes and has more of a story. The Supergirl version is interesting. He didn't really get much of a character in it. He was more of a side villain player. And I've never seen the Superboy episodes with Metallo. And
well, at least on Supergirl, when they did Crisis on Earth X, they did have an endoskeleton version of Metallo walking around. They did have a Terminator version of Metallo in there.
They did. So we got kind of the both versions. And then we saw Metallo on Lois and Clark. And I remember him. I just don't remember what his storyline was.
Yeah, I haven't reached that episode yet in my rewatch, so.
But it's just interesting that, you know, in the comic version, like, he looks so much like Superman, but with a mustache. So he decides to ditch the mustache.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that was ever picked up again after this issue. I don't know for sure. I haven't really read much pre-Crisis Metallo, but I thought it was neat what they did in this issue, having like this doppelganger Superman run around. You know, it led to some amusing, you know. Sorry, I got distracted by some other pages in here. Like when the chick goes over Niagara Falls in a barrel is probably my favorite part of the issue.
It looks like there is, and it looks like I'm pulling it up now. It looks like the Alex Ross's Justice number 3 has Metallo, and it is very much in the style that we're discussing. I'll see if I can put it in the chat here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that, like I said, reading this and seeing that this is John Corbin. You know, when I think of John Corbin as a military man that always has a history of trying to date and court Lois. You know,
That's cool.
so often, do we see storylines of Corbin trying to date her or works for her dad like he did in Secret Origins and stuff, and he's that military. To see him as this anti-Clark Kent in a way is neat. I like it, actually.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. He's kind of the anti-Clark Kent. Like, he's an anti-Superman because, you know, he has heaps of strength and stuff. He's bad, but he's also the anti-Clark Kent because he's an evil reporter who kind of is his doppelganger. I mean, he has an evil mustache to boot. So
it's true.
You know, it's like the mirror universe in Star Trek.
Never trust a man with a pencil mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you have a pencil mustache, I just assume that you're a villain.
I mean,
yeah,
don't we all? Like,
if movies and TV have taught us anything, if you have a pencil mustache, you're a bad person.
I love the little bit where Superman catches the globe to make the Atlas pose. That made me laugh. Superman's carrying the world on his shoulders. It's a true picture of his great service to humanity. And as I mentioned, that part, which really cracks me up, when the actress goes over Niagara Falls in the barrel because she wants Superman to save her as a publicity stunt, which I think kind of taps into that whole people are a bit too comfortable expecting Superman to save them.
Yes.
And he's aware of that, and he decides to teach her a lesson.
Well, good thing he heard it over the radio, otherwise she'd have just died.
Yeah, because he heard it over the radio, not with his super hearing, so if he wasn't listening to the radio, then, you know, maybe Batman would have saved her, I don't know.
I guess that's a good instance that he works, a good thing that he works in news and things like that. Radios and stuff are always on.
So when he hears about some idiot celebrity, he's able to save them.
Yeah.
But, you know, he does it so that he makes it look like it's like a lucky accident that she lived, so she won't do it again.
Which is to me is like just a great Superman moment. Much like how he kind of saves Lois at times, like using his breath or whatever, so that in that same thing, he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "You're not Superman." He's like, "No, I'm Clark." I could have. Yes, Lois, you could have died jumping out the window.
Yeah. That was good. Is that Superman 2 you're thinking of?
Yes.
The Donna cut where she just that because I thought remember the original cut, she's like in the river, and Superman's kind of like, well, Clark's kind of like using his heat vision to bring logs down to her.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny because, like, you know, she jumps in the river and she kind of knows Superman was in the area, but her jumping out the window is that much crazier.
Yes.
It's like, this lady is unstable if she's just going to jump out of the window. But you know, they were good scenes.
There were great scenes. And so I find I love reading original appearance stories.
Yeah.
And it was refreshing just on the story of Metallo here. And then, like you said, at the end, it just kind of ends abruptly where he's like, apparently kryptonite powered the mechanical heart in the metal chest. This green color rock gave him nothing but heart failure. I mean, I can see some of these lines being delivered very George Reeves style. You know, like I think about the Adventures of Superman, the way he kind of delivered things. I can see him saying these type of, I know, Inspector, he was dead wrong.
Yeah.
Like with a very straight
face.
Straight face with a kind of wink nod to the camera, like. But
yeah, it is a bit odd because he's dead. I think, yeah.
It is odd that it was just a rock that was painted green. It was like, I feel so powerful. It's working, and nothing.
Placebo effect.
I actually really liked that ending, though. I liked how Metallo was defeated, as it were, because it kind of makes sense that Superman wouldn't bring real kryptonite,
Yes.
Around with him, and the fact that he kind of dies by putting the wrong one in is like, I don't know, it just sat well with me. I liked it. I liked the resolution.
What did you think about him using his X-ray vision for an extended period of time to destroy the kryptonite rock?
I've always been a big fan of his heat vision being super concentrated X-ray vision, because I think it makes sense, or definitely made sense at the time scientifically. I'm not like, I don't know much about science, so I don't know if it's accurate or not, but in my head it makes sense. If you super concentrate your radioactive X-ray beams, it'll start melting stuff. So,
right.
I think that idea was introduced pretty early, like in the 40s. His heat vision being super concentrated X-ray vision.
I mean, it makes sense, but
it makes sense. It's always been a separate ability that I've known.
I guess when you think about it,
where there's no radioactive component to his heat vision.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense this way, because otherwise, what even causes heat vision if it's not? You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just forgetting an explanation.
Well, later the heat vision is like his body heating up and the energy being released
that's right.
From his eyes, from his cells, because you have like the two versions. You have the like the Smallville, where it comes out very much like heat waves.
Yeah,
you see in Smallville and Superman Returns more compared to like the straight like laser eyes that we see in everything else.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think for a long while, heat vision was pretty much invisible to other people. You only physically saw it when it was like a super concentrated, heavy burst, which I think kind of started around late pre-Crisis. I'm not sure, but I remember it being invisible most of the time to human eyes.
So that wraps up the Metallo story. And then this issue has another story that's it's got 3 stories in the middle, or 3 stories. We're going to kind of skip over the middle story.
Yeah.
And James, do you want to tell them why we're skipping the middle story?
I mean, I didn't read it, but it's called Kongorilla, which I know I looked at in an older issue. One of the other issues that LSK has covered, and there was a Kongorilla in that, and I read that one, and so I saw this come up. I was like, I don't know. I think I'm gonna skip that one. Yeah. Thank goodness it's only 6 pages. The Menace of Metallo is the largest portion of this issue, and this is 6 pages, and then we got and then we got our first appearance of Supergirl here in the back, which is 8 pages.
Which is what we're going to talk about next, because first of all, the Kongorilla threw me, because when I was reading, I totally forgot it was in there. Plus, I forgot this character, this story. I have no context for this discussion. It's much more interesting for the first appearance of 2 Superman legacy characters than a random gorilla. This isn't the hold on, welcome to Last Sons of Kongorilla here. Okay?
Yeah.
Kongorilla has no affiliation with Krypton.
He wasn't like, he escaped Krypton and overthrew Gorilla City. He's not even,
Kongorilla doesn't become Titano.
Yeah.
Yeah, Action Comics has had better backup features, that's for sure. I mean, obviously, Zatara's pretty famous, and he was originally
in Action Comics #1.
Yeah. So, I would rather read a Zatara backup story than a Kongorilla, because as James said, the one we did on LSK wasn't spectacular. But we covered it.
Well, at least Zatara has a long-reaching history in DC when it comes to that. You know, I mean, Action Comics #1. Zatara is still talked about and involved in stories, and his daughter Zatanna is there, and she's a major player.
Very big, yeah.
So he's had long-reaching effects. I don't think Kong Gorilla has had any connections to Gorilla City or Grodd or what's the other one? Salazar. Yeah.
I think Kong Gorilla was big when he was coming out, though. And he has popped up. He did pop up in Justice League, I'm pretty sure. But so he's in the DC universe technically. But yeah, I haven't enjoyed that much of what I've read of his stories. So.
I'm doing a quick Wikipedia search of Kong Gorilla here.
Do you want me to read out the synopsis for the Supergirl from Krypton then?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Before we go down our Kong Gorilla rabbit hole here of what is this character? Who is this character? Why is he here?
So, or I could send it to one of you guys, actually. One of you guys could read it out if you want to.
James?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead and send it over. Or
all right. So while I send over the credits, I'll just read out the credits. So the Supergirl from Krypton writer is Otto. I never get if it's Binder or Binder. I'm pretty sure it's Binder. With
the synopsis for the Supergirl from Krypton. Supergirl arrives. Clark Kent is working alone in his office one afternoon when he catches something out of the corner of his eye. Using his X-ray vision, he witnesses a purple-colored rocket ship crash land several miles away. Switching into his Superman costume, he flies off to investigate. When he arrives, he is shocked to discover that the rocket's sole occupant is another Kryptonian, a young, blonde-haired girl named Kara. Kara tells Superman that her hometown, Argo City, was blasted free of Krypton's destruction in a bubble of compressed air. The island soared through space as a free-floating planetoid. Her father was a scientist named Zor-El who created a force field bubble around the city to contain the atmosphere and also coated the ground with sheets of lead to prevent traces of kryptonite in the ground from poisoning the populace. Years later, when Kara was a teenager, a meteor shower in space penetrated the air bubble and tore through the lead shielding. In order to save his daughter from kryptonite poisoning, Zor-El designed a spaceship to rocket her away from the city. His wife learned of the existence of Earth and its Kryptonian hero, Superman. They chose to send Kara to Earth so that she can be with one of her own. Superman realizes that Kara's father, Zor-El, was the brother of his own father, making the two of them cousins. He is elated to find another Kryptonian, but remorseful for the fact that, like he, Kara is now an orphan. Supergirl's alter ego, Superman cannot take charge of Kara because he needs to protect his own secret identity. However, he flies her to the nearby town of Midvale and registers her at the Midvale orphanage. He provides her with a brown pigtailed wig, and Kara chooses the name Linda Lee as her new Earth name. Superman promises to train Kara in her new superpowers, stating that this Supergirl will become his new secret weapon against fighting crime. After Superman leaves, Kara settles in at the orphanage. She begins testing her new powers by cleaning her room with super breath and fixing a bent iron bed leg with super strength. She cannot wait for her first official adventure as Supergirl.
It's like a very thick summary. That's just very detailed. It's almost as much as the issue itself.
Yeah,
it pretty much gives all the details of the issue itself.
I do
as
like
big as the Metallo one.
I do like this cover. It's a very iconic cover of her flying out of the rocket and Superman, descending down.
It was Kurt Swan and Al Pacino who did the cover.
Yeah. Did you find an author? I did not find an author when I was looking this up.
Oh, for the Supergirl from Krypton?
Yeah.
Otto Binder created Supergirl and did that story, I believe.
See, that's what I thought, but I couldn't find it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much a story that's it just sets up a new character, and she gets her own backup feature the next issue, I believe. So she has an ongoing series within Action Comics after this.
I mean, yeah, it was Otto Binder. It's very interesting because the first page is, you got the great, scroll at the top telling the story, and it just kind of quickly, look, I'm Supergirl, and I'm real, and very, Clark sitting in his office this is a job for Superman. And he goes to investigate the rocket, and he opens it up, and boom, don't worry, Superman, I'm alive without a scratch. The writing is so, surface.
It's very basic.
Why not?
Even compared to the Metallo story, it's, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's just how, if we were writing comics, if you were writing this story today, the first 2 pages just right here, that would be almost an entire issue.
It just gets right to the point, really. They want to introduce this new character, and they want to smack it out in 8 pages. So they pretty much it's like a big info dump, really, at the start.
It is, because then she's the last panel of her is Superman says, Kara says, Kara, however we want to say it here. This is in print. We don't know how it was pronounced. She says, I am also from the planet Krypton. He's like, that's impossible. The planet exploded. She's like, let me tell you my story. And the next, pages is her story, which it's very fascinating. They discuss how a chunk of the planet survived, how they had their food machine, and there was the part started turning into kryptonite, so they covered it with lead. But then meteor showers over time started puncturing the lead, so they used their super space telescope to look and found Superman on Earth.
Well, it was awfully nice and convenient that their lead factories came on that chunk of the planet with them.
Yeah.
I mean, they even had lead as a material. The fact that they had the technology to build the rocket to send her and not, anyone else, or save the chunk of planet.
Yeah, there's also the fact that, a huge city just blew away in a chunk very luckily when Krypton exploded, which I'm sure is why that the origin's been changed, obviously.
I'm a leaf on the wind.
I mean, Supergirl, she suffers from reboots and a lot where, even the animated series that we're all familiar with, she wasn't Kara Zor-El in the animated series. And then
no, the Argo was actually a sister planet on that. Yeah. And they were like Kryptonian-like beings, but they weren't Krypton. But she's not Kryptonian.
Yeah, very similar to Mon-El, but at the same time, she was more Kryptonian than the Mon-El character was. She was Kara NZ on there.
Yeah.
And her mom says, I'll make you a suit like Superman's, so he'll know you're a girl from Krypton. And they send her off. And she says, my father, my mother, all the people are dying. I'm an orphan of space now. You know, and then this is where we have our like the next page is Kara like telling Superman I just think this is hilarious. He says, you know, my father sent me here as an infant. I never knew all this. My father, Jor-El. She's like, Jor-El? My father's name was Zor-El. Your father's brother. Great Scott. We're cousins. I have never heard Superman say Great Scott as much as I have in this issue.
Oh, really? No, you say it all the time.
Because this is like the first, like I had read this before, but this was the first one I had read of this era.
Okay.
Years ago.
Yeah.
So when I was reading this last night, I just was kind of chuckling to myself, like remembering like my first impressions, because all I could think about was like Back to the Future. Great Scott.
Yeah.
Great Scott.
Yeah.
And the look on his face that they draw when he says, Great Scott, and you're my cousin. It's almost like he again, he lifts his hand off her shoulder. It's like he backs off like, okay, hold on. Let me rethink this.
Awesome. I finally meet someone else from my own planet. It's a girl. Awesome. And she's my cousin. I got family, but dang.
Yeah. No.
Was incest a thing on Krypton? It is on
It must have been, because otherwise they would have reproduced the Kryptonian race. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice enough story. It has. Whenever I read this story, I always have in my mind the tragic ending this story really has with Crisis on Infinite Earths. Which I think is a great moment, actually, her death and Superman being the last survivor again. But
see, with this story, and we'll get there soon. We're almost done wrapping up the story, but I do think it's interesting just how immediately, because at this point the Kents are dead, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
My post-crisis, I'm a little fuzzy, or pre-crisis.
Yeah. Pre-crisis, Kent's died. After, I don't know when exactly they died. It never shows it, but they did die at some point.
They died before he even got like to Metropolis and became Superman.
I think so. Yeah. They were definitely dead before he was Superman. They were dead in Superman: The Secret Years, and he was still Superboy at that point, I think. So
because their biggest part was the Superboy.
Yeah, they're in Superboy and Legion.
So that's part of why he can take her to Ma and Pa.
Dumps her on an orphanage.
Yeah, he just decides, hey, you have these new powers that you're just learning that you don't know what you're doing with. So here, I'm going to take you to an orphanage.
Yeah, I guess they had to work out a way to give her her own city and place to hang out without Superman. And it's kind of ironic because that's originally what happened to Superman, is the Kents dumped him at an orphanage. So.
And then they went back later and got him, which is weird, but...
Yeah, I guess it's because they only had a certain amount of pages in Action Comics 1, so they wrote him being dumped at the orphanage, and then with Superman 1, they're like, oh, we can expand this a bit, let's have the Kents pick him back up from the orphanage. But they couldn't get rid of the orphanage part, so...
So here we have,
yeah, right.
So here,
well, at least like when she comes back in like 2006 in Batman, Superman, or Superman, Batman, Supergirl, they take her to the fortress and kind of at least teach her how to let her learn how to use her abilities before they just put her in with innocent people and who could potentially be harmed by her lack of control of her abilities.
I mean, this is brief even for the time.
Yeah. It's a lot. I mean, if you look at it, it's what 2-page introduction, 2-page backstory, 2-page deciding what to do, and then Superman exits, and it's like 2 pages of her in the orphanage of what to do. So I love that. This is one thing I always like about female superheroes is when they use a wig to change their image. Either I think it's just one of the best things they can do for a mask to add to their costume. But, in this, she doesn't put on glasses, but she puts on a brown wig. And I just think it's great. And he's like, you choose an Earth name. And she's like, Linda Lee. And I love this. Or, as good as any. And he's in Superman's mind. Lana Lang was my first girlfriend when I was Superboy. Lois Lane replaced her when I became Superman. By sheer coincidence, she picks the same initials of LL.
That struck me as a bit odd that he drew the love interest parallels, considering Lex Luthor was also LL. I think Laurie Lamaris came out around the same month, actually, so that probably... But, he's getting Lex Luthor and the significant LLs in his life.
Yeah, quite a few of them.
Yeah. But, I like this story. It's great. It's small, it's charming, but, you compare this to other stories of the time, the longer ones, and they generally try to justify everything with, science and stuff, and they go into detail, whereas this story is kind of the opposite, where they kind of just sort of gloss over everything. And to me, this story just feels... It doesn't really feel like... It feels more like an editorial story where it's like, hey, just write a few pages to introduce this character so we can give her an ongoing in this book.
Yeah.
We want a Superman for girls, which is, literally why she was created. And then they threw together this 8-page story to, sort of be like, oh, this is who she is, and now she's in this town doing stuff, and Superman will probably pop in once in a while. But yeah, this was like an ad, really, for her. Yeah, ongoing.
It feels like the kind of story that sums up something that was written just as a tease to introduce a character, or the kind of story that you would get if you were buying an action figure.
Yeah,
you would get a little comic to tell their story.
Yeah.
Or whatever, to introduce you, and then you would it was written specifically for that. Oh, here's a quick summary of the character. It feels very much like that type of a story.
Yeah.
And then on the last page here, she's flying around Midvale, and she finds the Superman movie poster of Superboy. Now showing old-time films, the history of Superboy in Smallville. Definitely, that pre-crisis Superboy story, which I'm not a super huge fan of.
I wasn't until I read The Secret Years, because that clearly established his development from Superboy into Superman.
I don't know. I just have always been the idea of just him, stepping up and becoming Superman instead of this gradual. Because I feel like if he was Superboy in Smallville, you can work backwards and figure out who he is. Okay, so Superboy was in Metropolis or in Smallville growing up. All these coincidences happened. Now he's in Metropolis. All these coincidences. Clark Kent seems to be around. Let me start piecing things together here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Superboy thing is, it's never been my favorite part. Honestly, in the later issues here that Bendis has done, part of my, what I've really enjoyed is that John Kent as Superboy, is responsible for the idea of the United Planets and for inspiring the Legion, and he's the one who goes to the future. I thought that was kind of a nice way to give that part of Superman's story to him. Maybe not that B part. Maybe not that B Superman's story.
I feel like you could do the same thing, but have Superman inspire the Legion instead of Superboy, instead of kind of just stealing a chunk of Superman's history and giving it to John, because I just felt like that was kind of undeserved. It was not undeserved, but not earned from a storytelling perspective. The only reason he earned it is because he's Superman's son.
Well, they also did, kind of skip 7 years of his life.
Yeah.
Had to age him up from a 10-year-old to a 17-year-old overnight.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, Clark as Superboy is not part of my ideal thing, but like, obviously it was very successful, and they are good comics, actually. But obviously, in terms of the modern era and like trying to tell like the perfect ideal Superman story, Superboy doesn't really fit in there. But I do think they made it work quite well with the Secret Years, because his transition from Superboy to Superman, involved certain decisions that Superboy couldn't really make. But yeah, and that's like one of the things I don't like about Secret Origins. One of the many, many, many things I don't like about it is how Johns just brought Superboy back because Johns liked reading Superboy when he grew up. Like, that whole story is just like Johns likes things when he was 10, so he's just going to make them the canonical Superman origin story, and it's too bad. If you disagree. He didn't write it as a good story. He just put in what he liked. Sorry, I had to get that off.
Yeah, I mean,
and now it's the same
it's
again,
probably just it's just the time that I grew up and what I've read, and I've read a lot more modern comics than I have anything from prior to pre-crisis. So the idea that Superman grew up, and not that he didn't help people where he could or anything, but the idea that he
was wearing the costume,
wearing the costume and was more hidden, hiding who he was before he became Superman, before he publicly revealed himself, when he was a grown up and when he had the maturity and the resources to be able to hide who he was as a person. So the fact of him not being Superboy makes more sense to me I think it makes in my sense. Era of Superman, and that John Kent being a Superboy, and maybe the untold story that we don't know yet is what has inspired the Legion and things like that. I mean, I like that. I like that route of going with it. Because it's just it just seems a little more. It just fits a little more as a developing story of the Superman that I have basically grown up with and read so far to this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And the story is still developing in that respect.
Yeah, and I definitely agree that, like, Clark Kent being Superboy in tights and everything, like, doesn't really gel that well. I mean, I said Superman: The Secret Years did help to fix that, but if you're making an ideal Superman story, I don't think many writers are going to put Superboy in there, because from a narrative perspective, it just doesn't work that well. And I mean, honestly, my favorite Superboy is Connor Kent. I think he's a really interesting character, and I would have much preferred to see him explore him becoming Superman in the future, as opposed to John.
See, with Connor, I have said I think Connor right now, he needs his own moniker. He needs his own name. Connor needs to basically become the Nightwing to Superman. Because now we have a dual Superboy kind of thing where we have Connor and we have John. I think. Yeah,
I mean, well, that's.
They need. I
guess my problem. Sorry, go on.
No, I'm just saying. I think we're at a point where Connor, I would like to see, kind of step up and play this more of a role in things.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what I meant is because they're doing this 5G thing, which probably isn't going to last long at this rate, but where John Kent will take over the mantle of Superman, and it's kind of like, well, I really wanted that to be Connor Kent, because he's been around for a long time. and the way his background and personality and his power set are, I think that would be a really interesting idea to do, to have him embrace this sort of ultimate destiny as the next Superman. But John is like, he's already kind of... I just don't think it's as interesting a transition, because he's already his son. He has the same powers. He's pretty much like... you know what I mean? Like, it's...
Mm-hmm.
Just much less interesting for me.
Right. Well, there's a story. What is it? There's the Titans become the Justice League of Tomorrow, where Connor Kent is Superman.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Cassie Sandsmark is Wonder Woman, and Bart Allen is the Flash. And Tim Drake. I heard it was an issue during John's Titans run where there was the Justice League of Tomorrow, and then they came back during the storyline where Tim came back as Batman and was trying to kill people.
Okay.
Or what was it, the Savior storyline when Tim became the Savior? Is that what happened?
I vaguely
trying to remember during
that.
Rebirth what it was.
Like, I remember hearing about that, but I didn't read it.
So I haven't gone back to read. I haven't found, because I want to read the John's Titans run. I haven't gone back to that yet and found the issue. But I really did like when I was reading that run, because it did incorporate John Kent as Superboy,
right?
And Damian Wayne and some of the Titans and stuff. I know I have it. I just can't remember all the issues right now. But they did bring in that version of the Justice League of Tomorrow, where Connor Kent was Superman. And I was like, I want to see that explored more.
Yeah, see, I think it's such an interesting thing to do with that character. Obviously, like a temporary thing, but still, because I find Connor Kent, like, out of the super family, besides Superman, he's my favorite. I think he's got the best origin.
No, mine stuff as well.
You know, he's not just like another Kryptonian.
He's got a very
he's definitely
story.
Yeah, he's a great legacy character, I guess. But
I would read a thing. You know, they've got different books. I mean, they've had like Earth 2, and they've had like Justice League Beyond and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'd read a Justice League of Tomorrow or something. Ongoing series that has Connor Kent as Superman and like I said, Cassie Sandsmark and Bart Allen and Tim as the future of the Justice League. Yeah.
You know, that'd be great. I guess we'll just have to email DC.
Hey, Jim Lee, you're the publisher.
Man, so it's still just Jim Lee. It's so bizarre.
Yep, he's the sole publisher. I don't know. He must have some.
One morning and was like, "Wait, what? I'm in charge."
I don't know. He must have some really serious ideas. Like, if he's going to be like the sole publisher, and he was involved in like getting Ezra Miller on the Flash for on Crisis, like, and for the movies and stuff. Like, he's going to be like the DC Kevin Feige of the movies and the comics. Like. The whole friggin' DC universe for the time being just comes straight from Jim Lee.
It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. Who knows how it'll go, but whatever, you know, change is the only constant you can count on. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you know, it's funny going back to the sort of origins. Like I grew up with pre-Crisis Superman. You know, like my favorite era is the Bronze Age, like the 70s and 80s before Byrne's reboot, although I do love Byrne's reboot. But I grew up with like the 50s and 60s stories, and like my ideal Superman origin is like it's like if you combine post-crisis with pre-crisis. I like too many elements from both. Like I like the fact that there's no Superboy, but I also like the fact that the Kents died before he's Superman. So I guess Grant Morrison's is actually really close. His New 52 origin was pretty much that, which I liked. So
yeah, they did die in a car crash when he was when he was off at prom. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Doomsday Clock retcon that.
Yeah, thanks, Johns. Now Clark was Superboy again, I think. Again, with Doomsday Clock, John seems to have gone like, hey, these are the things I want that I like in a Superman origin, and he's just done that, and now it's more confusing than ever. So, yeah.
Well,
like, Johns is great, but sometimes he's not.
Wasn't it basically that all the origins are valid because they were all experiments being done by Dr. Manhattan to see what Superman would do and how Clark is? And
yeah. That is the aspect I liked, how he made everything canon or everything valid. I did like that.
Yeah, something about time, about Superman needing to exist in all the eras and stuff, and him, all of his origins like being valid.
It's just like all of a sudden the Kents are alive again, and if I was like a casual reader reading Superman, I would just be so confused.
Yes.
You know, like it's just, and it's like, I get it, the Kents are cool, but like, did they really need to come back? Like, was it a thing that was like urgent that needed to just muddle things? You know, I mean, Johns killed Pa Kent at the end of Brainiac as well. So, and sorry, my head's just turned into like a porridge right now. You guys take it.
No, it's confusing. That's why sometimes I when I was younger, most of my Superman knowledge and stuff came from the whatever I was able to watch because it was harder to find comic shops. There wasn't really any comic shop. There was a couple like grocery store type spinner rack things, and they had maybe what was new and stuff like that. So when I was younger, I remember of course Superman the movie, Pa Kent dies. Okay, all right,
yeah,
and then Lois and Clark the TV show. Hey, both Kents are alive, and that was and I'm like trying to wrap my head.
And it didn't
like,
change.
And I was like, hey, wait a minute, I thought he was supposed to be dead, because I didn't understand.
Oh, right.
You change things in different locations, and then of course, I get the animated series. They're both alive, which I actually really love in the animated series. And then comes along later on down the line, Smallville, and even in Superboy, the TV series, they're both alive. So
that would make sense.
Other than in any kind of film version or anything, other than the George Reeves and the Kirk Allen, they both die in those.
I think the mother's still alive in the George Reeves one.
I'm sure. Hold on.
She sees him off on the train, but his Eben, Pa Kent, dies.
Yeah, Eben dies, and I think they both died in the Kirk Allen one. Because it's fair. Because I just recently watched both of them. And
it's easy to get them mixed up.
The story beats for the first episode and the first episode of the serial is so similar.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they took the serial script and just expanded on it to make the George Reeves pilot.
I feel like that's exactly what they did, actually.
They even both end more with a Superman tease than actually a Superman save.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Kents were kind of in the older thing was just like they had him as a child and goodbye. Like they
because they were old.
They were like grandparents raising him.
Yeah, so it kind of like in pre-Crisis, they just kind of died of natural causes, I think, before he was Superman. But they were still in all the Superboy stories, and they were good. They had like lots of personality and stuff. I really like. I think my favorite version of the Kents is in Lois and Clark. They feel like, I don't know, they're funny. They feel like people, especially Pa Kent cracks me up.
Yes. They're not overly like dramatic.
Yeah, they're not these like walking sages, that are just there. If Superman needs advice, he can go and they can give him like Gandhi level advice.
That would be a cool, like, fun discussion, like rank your Pa Kents. Like, because
Eben's number one.
Eben, yes.
Which Eben? Which the Kirk Allen or the George like version? Like, it would be too hard.
Zoops.
It would be too hard to like rank Paws in the comics because they pop in and come and go, and too many one-off like this Paw. But yeah, if we did live action Paws, man. Real quick, I'm putting them together in my brain real quick.
Yeah, my brain is working overtime as well. I think my favorite live action part is definitely Lois and Clark because he's a very funny character. When he's getting super upset because he found out Martha got painted nude at one point or something, and he feels like cheating on him, and he just goes to Metropolis and lives with Clark for ages, and it's just great.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
He would be number one.
Yeah, he would probably be number one. John Snyder would probably be number two.
Yep, number three would be Glenn Ford.
Which one's John Snyder? Is that Smallville?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he's a great character in Smallville, but it really bugged me how he sort of I think we talked about this before. He treated Lex very badly, even when Lex was like doing the right thing.
Incongruently, like it'll be one like, oh, Lex is part of the family. We like Lex. I'm going to give him a chance. Lex, you've earned my respect. Then the next one, no, Lex, you are evil, vile man. Like, and that's just part of the writing and like Smallville's story of, we're going to keep going, guys. We got another season. What?
Yeah. I see.
We
got to change this plot thread and keep going for another 2 years. What?
Right. Well, Smallville was at that transition of episodic television to a season-length arc. So they had in the first half of the show they had villain of the week and very episodic TV, and they slowly got into more of season-long arcs as like season 3 continued, season 4 continued, season 5 continued.
Season 4 was rough.
There's some decent episodes there, but
absolutely.
There's like also
the overall plot of like the Lana being a witch or whatever was like, I don't know. When the football episodes are the highlight of your story, I think there's something wrong there. In a Superman show. Or I guess Smallville is pretty much Superboy, the show, because it's pretty much as ridiculous as these comics from the 50s.
Yeah.
Like
that has very Silver Age feel as well, of just like
the different kryptonites and stuff. I think my favorite Mark Kent is definitely the Henry Cavill version.
Diane Lane.
Yeah, I think she definitely has the most kind of presence as well, besides Lois and Clark Mark, because all the other Mark Kents are kind of just sitting around.
Yeah, Annette O'Toole is great from Smallville.
I forgot about her. Yeah,
sadly, like a lot of her stories were just for a while were just linked to the family problems with her and John, her and John, and Lionel liking her. But once he passed away, they started giving her more stories for a couple of seasons. They put her as the patriarch at that point, and
I just remember her getting really angry that Clark was sheltering an immigrant.
Well, he is the ultimate immigrant, so
yeah, that episode was a bit on the nose, but I did like it. It's true. We always come back to Smallville.
Yeah, it's just because it's a show for our generation that's just impacting. I mean, it ran for 10 years, more so than any other Superman series.
More than any other superhero series to date yet.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking about it for a second, but yeah, you're right. It's not the most famous one, but it's definitely the longest one.
I mean, it paved the way. If there wasn't a Smallville, there wouldn't be Arrow. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite superhero TV series is Lois and Clark, though. I've really fallen in love with that show.
It's a great
show. I still love going back to watch that.
It's a feel-good Superman series, especially
absolutely,
especially the first 2 seasons. Like, there's some things in the latter seasons that kind of gets a little crazier, like when Lois becomes Wanda Detroit, isn't it? Like that whole little arc there kind of just bummed me. So I was like, this amnesia thing just.
Oh.
But with Ma Kent, I've been sitting there thinking, I was like, I think it really is when it comes down to Ma, it's just kind of Annette O'Toole versus Diane Lane.
I do like the mother from Lois and Clark, though. She's like that. She's like that mother. Like, she's like the mother from Superman Earth 1. Like we were reading. How does she know? How does a mother always know? She's like that mother.
I put her at my number 1, and then it's a battle for number 2 for the other 2 is what I meant. Like, just because I feel like Kay Callan's representation of Martha is that very motherly, fun. It very much, like you said, does remind me kind of the Earth 1, even the Birthright Martha, of being very much a mother that she knows her son, is very open to talk about with her son. Because, isn't it Birthright that has the line, or is it even, I think, maybe in Secret Origins, with like, because I know it's in Lois and Clark, we're like, well, they might not be looking at your face. And he's like, Mom? Because they're talking about his tights and everything. Because it's in Lois and Clark, but I know it's also been utilized. I know in Birthright she makes when he's trying to make the Clark Kent disguise, she's like, son, you have to wear a looser shirt. I can see your 6-pack from here.
Right.
So
yeah.
But I mean, other than those 3, like, the Kents have always, I think, kind of been underserved. And, until we got to the Lois and Clark era. So, and that's really, I think, where they became very predominant characters in other forms of media. I mean, the comics, there's such a history, like we discussed, them being killed off and then them both being around, then just one being around. And we have all the reboots and all that kind of stuff. It gets kind of hard.
If you think about it, the Kents were dead for 48 years. So they've still been dead for over half the time that Superman's been in publication.
Yeah.
But when they came back, then it just went crazy. Sometimes, one would die, then, you know what I mean? But
I always thought
simple.
I always thought it'd be an interesting story to go into what happened if Martha was the one that died. They always do Jonathan died.
Yeah, they've never done that. I mean, they've done both, but they've never done just Martha.
And then the kind of dynamic that Clark and Jonathan would have after that.
I guess where could they possibly do it, really? Because they had their reboot, and Morrison killed them.
Now they're both
and
back.
then now they're both back. So there's no real, unless they kill off Martha at some point in the future, which would, I don't know.
It would have to be farther down the line, or like a reboot of like a TV series or movie, or a new Elseworlds type tale.
Yeah.
But it's just a story that, and I don't think
it's never been covered.
I don't think we know the Kents. I don't think we know where the Kents stand right now as far as the upcoming Tyler Hoechlin series.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. Do we even know what the fate of that Superman's parents are? Kents.
I don't think so, because they kind of made an explanation more about why he took her to the Danvers instead of like going to Ma and Pa. About her growing up in a family, the Danvers being trusted friends, and all the work they were doing with aliens. I still think it was kind of weird. Here's my cousin, take care of her. We never really saw like a relationship between like Clark and the Danvers, really, or so I still think that's just kind of awkward. But
there's also
the one time they went to the farm. During was it Elseworlds, when they came over to the Smallville farm, there was just Lois and Clark there. There was no parents.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't be.
They could have been on vacation.
Oh, that's right. I remember now. Yeah. I mean, there's also Titans, but obviously Superman hasn't appeared in that show yet.
True.
And I doubt, I doubt we would get much Superman content, especially in relation to one of his parents dying, because it's more about Superboy.
They did bring up they did bring up in Titans, they did bring up the Kent farm.
Yeah, they did.
And that's where he was going to go, but in his head, his memories were messed up. He went to Lionel Luthor's.
Yeah.
Which I really look forward to more Superboy on Titans and development of his story. Which I feel like Titans, like I like Titans, but I feel like it's just not there yet. Like they just don't know where to they take too long for some things, and
Season 2 was good around the middle, and then it kind of fell on its face. Like the fact that Superboy was standing there while Wonder Girl went and died.
Oh yeah. I don't know.
Carrying the thing, I was like, that was so awkward.
If you would listen to our discussion on it, I said it feels like there was something lost in editing or something like that.
Yeah,
it's so jumbled because to me,
it takes you out of it.
Right. If I was going to do this, I would have had Superboy run up and save the people because he needs to redeem himself in front of people after what just happened.
Yeah.
And then while he does that and everyone's attention, you have Deathstroke just kind of show around the corner, and Deathstroke shoots and hits Donna. And then Deathstroke dies after shooting her. So while Superboy is saving these people from electricity, which James pointed out, Donna had just went toe-to-toe with Superboy, and they had exchanged blows and attacks and all this, and she survived. So all of a sudden, this really weird, contrite...
Well, I guess electricity's different.
But it just...
her physiology is different, I mean, I suppose she could die from high-voltage electricity, but, just...
Superboy could
the way it was, Yeah, Superboy could take it. He would catch it and be unaffected by the high-voltage electricity while, Donna's trying to save the people or whatever, and, oh, yay, she got saved, she saved the people, everybody's clapping, and then boom, bullet, like she got shot and killed.
Yeah.
Like,
It just would have been emotional resonance.
Like,
It would have worked on more levels.
and the idea that Deathstroke was dead too, like he got ran through with a sword, like.
Well, I hope he'll be back.
I'm pretty sure Deathstroke survived a lot worse than that.
Like if he's actually dead after that, like I'm still annoyed about the Nightwing explanation. I was so hoping they'd do the Kryptonian thing.
Yes.
I had a feeling that they wouldn't, but I didn't think it would be like because of some abstract folk legend that his prison cellmates had.
That's where it kind of went downhill for me, is where all of a sudden Dick decides to turn himself in, like by being like an idiot and attacking people in the airport to get arrested.
And they all abandon Beast Boy and Connor. Like,
that's what made me mad, is we have this guy, Connor, that just showed up out of nowhere, has a Superman tattoo, has Superman-esque powers, was hit by kryptonite that we're trying to heal, and Beast Boy, and then Dick just bails on everybody.
Yeah.
Like, and Beast Boy...
His I did bring it up, I believe, during our thing. His length of self-pity for what happened, like, was just... It was like CW dramatic irony length. You know what I mean? Like,
and even then,
they drug that out so far and did some really questionable things with it.
And even then, I feel like his self-pity was... I mean, even then, when you find out what happened...
Incredibly self-destructive.
Even then, when you find out that, like, how he just lied about how Jericho died. Jericho died basically saving him. I just feel like, why would you even lie about that? And, you know, why?
Yeah, it didn't really make sense.
Like I understand you guys are pissed that I did this, that I went off on my own and Jericho died, but Jericho literally stepped in front of a sword to save me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what was there to lie about, and why would that be the end of everything? You know what I mean?
I think after the Superboy episode, it was pretty much watching a weekly train wreck where, like, all this stuff that was set up was just kind of like crashing and just not making any sense. And I was just wondering, like, wait, what are the writers doing? Like, I don't know. It was a very weird experience.
I mean, I thought the episode...
They imploded pretty hard.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's like, and Beast Boy, I mean, come on, like, he got tortured. He got the crap end, you know, and then he tried to help Connor, but, you know, Connor still is very child mind-like and, you know, causes problems.
Yeah.
And that to me is where I just got angry, because I was like, this is just like Dick Grayson just being completely like the most selfish possible. You know,
but we did get the Bat Dance. So
I mean,
I think honestly that makes it all worth it for me. Is that
that made sense just because that was like Batman in Dick's mind. It wasn't actually Bruce physically there, but in my head, every time he's on screen, I just try to tell myself that that's Alfred. I like it better.
The idea of that guy being Bruce is one thing. We only actually saw him be like a definitive Bruce Wayne, like what, the first episode and the last episode, whereas the rest of it's questionable about what happened at the one part in the diner, but also other representations of him were how Dick had pictured him during all of this time. So, like, during all the problems he has, he blames Bruce for so much. Like, so Bruce seems like such this terrible person because that's how Dick views him.
It turns out he's, like, not that bad.
Yeah, he's not that person, but just everything that Dick had dealt with in his personal life, and then growing up doing what he was doing, you know, it kind of took its toll on him and, you know, twisted him in a certain way. And now he's like finally gotten over that. but yeah, so in the first 2 seasons, like Batman is this almost villainous, ominous role character, yeah, and it's all because it's how Dick sees him as such, like this violent, uncaring character.
I could never see Dick's vision of his perception of the future coming real now that we've actually seen Bruce.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't seem capable of that. I did like his fight scene in the memory. I can't even remember, in the hallucination memory, whatever it was. Bruce's fight scene with either Dick or something. I did like how they were using kind of Eastern Chinese martial arts and stuff. I thought that was cool. Because I wasn't really like sold on him as Batman, but when they used that fighting style for him, I could see it. It works for his kind of physicality. But I still don't think he's like the best casting.
Nope.
They could have had.
They definitely made it seem like when you talk about that fight scene, like how Dick was getting beat up so badly, and it was like effortless for Bruce. Like, if they made like Bruce Wayne like that good when it came to a good majority of people that he fought against, except for like your extreme, your Ra's al Ghuls, your Deathstrokes, your Shiva, these people who have this incredible grasp of martial arts and things like that, you know what I mean? But if Bruce up against your regular street thugs, it's an effortless combat because they don't stand a chance.
Yeah, he's just that skilled.
Yeah.
And Titans Season 3, we've heard nothing about if they filmed anything or we're going to film anything, because usually...
It got renewed, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it got renewed.
Yeah.
And we were supposed... usually we get, like, a trailer around Comic-Con that, like last year they dropped the trailer and then it premiered, like, a month later.
Yeah.
And usually we hear something around Comic-Con time. So I don't know. Like, they've been very quiet about it. At one point...
I guess with everything going on...
They were supposed to bring in, I had read the Batgirl, Barbara, was going to be in Season 3.
I will say they do not need more characters. I think they're bloated right now.
It just kind of depends if everybody comes back.
That's true. I mean, they more characters in the sense of, like, more mentors, like Wonder Woman and Clark Kent being like minor characters, but I think no more main cast members unless people leave.
Like technically Donna's dead. I think they can bring her back. I
think that's the intention with Raven going to Themyscira.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would be interesting, kind of have like Raven's story in Themyscira for a partial time, an episode or two, and then but they definitely need to step up the costume fighting portion of the show. I understand that the second season kind of, they were like the characters were trying not to be the Titans, so they kind of, they were doing everything in street clothes, but
that's over.
This season they are the Titans again. You know what I mean? Like last season there were so little costumes when it came to the things they were doing, especially present day. I mean, that's one thing that we've said you can always count on the CW for. You're always going to get in costume superhero action.
Unless it's Smallville.
Well, unless it's Smallville. The Arrowverse, you can count on every episode, them being in costume. I mean, I guess Legends got away from that for a good while, too, but
made me mad.
They were still in time period costumes and stuff like that, but you always see Supergirl in her suit. You always see the Flash. You always saw Arrow. You always see Black Lightning. Like,
I mean, the costumes are there for Titans, and they look good as well.
Yeah, they look better than anything on the CW.
Yeah, like the Wonder Girl costume, the Robin outfit. You know,
The night.
they're all,
The other Robin outfit.
Yeah, the other Robin.
I actually really love the Wonder Girl. I thought it was like the best representation of what the comic, but also looked the most practical.
And even Superboy, I mean, he looked just like Young Justice Superboy with the cargo pants and the boots and the t-shirt.
Oh yeah, and people complaining it looks like too simple and stuff. I'm like, well, that's what it is. It's a t-shirt with jeans. But like, how do you spiff it up? It's perfect, you know.
It's either jeans or cargo pants. That's the jeans is what he wears when he's off duty. The cargo pants is what he wears when he's on duty. That's Young Justice.
Like, oh, he looks like a cosplayer, and I'm like,
he needs the extra pockets.
That's why he's the best super character to cosplay.
Oh, totally. Or the New 52 jeans look, yeah.
But Hawk and Dove, like I think they could take a step back in season 3. I feel like their story's kind of done. Like I feel like we've gotten a really good roller coaster.
They had no reason to split up.
You know, I feel like their time has been told. Like they become not main characters for season 3. They pop in maybe an episode or something.
Yeah.
But I feel like they've done their part. It's time to really let Beast Boy and Connor and Raven step up, because like Raven's still got a lot of story to tell. Like because we know that what she's dealing with Trigon being basically imprisoned.
Yeah, that never got. That whole transition after Trigon was defeated was super weird, because all the Titans gave in to their desires, like all of them except Beast Boy. And in a lot of those visions, they killed each other. But after Trigon's defeated, they're all like really buddy with each other. I really wanted to say how odd that was. Like it felt so weird.
Well, I mean
Raven walked in and created this big old smoke screen and banished Trigon away, and then she walked out a year and a half older.
Yeah. Thank you, editing.
Yeah. I think they had an idea of where they wanted to go. I mean, so from what I understand, one of the original stories for Raven and Trigon was Trigon did seduce all of the Titans one by one and brought them under his spell. So I mean, that's, from what I understand, that's a comic accurate event that happened during that time. But yes, the transition, the way they edited, I think they had a plan where they were going with it, and then they're like, we got a season 2, okay, we can do something else. And then I don't know what happened there, why everything got stretched out. It's like, okay, we got a season 2, like let's create a story for season 2, but let's let's stretch everything out across and
moving the finale,
smear some things so thin.
It was so bad.
It just didn't work because there's I had the picture at one point in time that showed the more comic accurate Starfire costume and everything like that we were supposed to get, and none of that made it. Like they changed it.
Right. I mean, so it happened so fast, the Trigon thing at the very end and at the beginning of the season. Like it happened so fast, but as season 2 progresses, she's still dealing with it. He's imprisoned. He's still with her and using her and things like that. So it's really not done. It seemed like it was so fast and so easy, but it's not over. It
was so fast and easy for the other Titans. Like I get why Raven is still getting over it. All the other Titans, they all succumbed to their dark. They all lost the willpower test and they all just got over it like immediately. Raven's the only one who's still not over it, and that just bugged me because they had to move on to the next plot line, I guess, and they all had to be friends really quick. So, you know, they should have called Superman and Batman in because they have actually some self-control, so they probably wouldn't have given in to their, dark impulses.
Well, one of the things I heard about, because I haven't read Wolfman and Perez's Titans run, one of the things that I did hear about, which the show is supposed to be heavily influenced by that, but you can see that they're pulling from a lot of different eras, is that it wasn't as much about like the costumed action and stuff like that as more about the friendship and the family interaction between the characters. And I mean, if that's the case, they're really, really using that heavily. And I don't know, maybe budget wise, it's easier to go with, but still.
Well, it would be fine if they were doing that well. But I don't think they are. But I guess, we'll see what season 3 holds. At least Doom Patrol's coming out soon.
We know that season 3 is supposed to have Blackfire.
Oh, yay. The least interesting plot in Titans, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys are into the Starfire stuff, but I wasn't really.
No.
Well, Anna Diop did great. I can say that.
Yeah.
She was great. The story is another thing.
Yeah.
The way, so I don't know. I think, and maybe it's because the way it seems like they're doing stuff on DC Universe is like these character arcs are not like what we're used to seeing. You know what I mean? Like there's a season character arc and each character achieves a new level every time. You know what I mean? Whereas on like the DC Universe, it's like the character arc is from the beginning, from where we start to when we finally reach an ending. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's not just because we're on a new season means the character's, in a new place. You know what I mean? Has the story brought the character to a new place yet? No. So we're going to, that character is going to continue to develop until they get to that point, whether it's in season 2, season 3, or beyond.
I guess we'll see.
Nope, he's right.
Well, they've definitely, in all the shows so far, they've definitely taken a different route when it comes to telling a story and developing the shows. It's different on DC Universe. It just is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not a standard fare of what people are used to, and I think that's why some people like the way it goes, some people don't. I mean, I'm in the middle. I like stuff. There are stuff that I don't, and I'd say there's more that I like than that I don't, because I've really enjoyed them, and I can't wait for Doom Patrol season 2. I love Doom Patrol. That was a great show.
It was, yeah.
The character work in that show is far beyond anything else that's been on TV or DC Universe.
Doom Patrol, out of all the DC shows, I think is definitely head and shoulders.
Yeah. It has the most, like you said, it has the most character work. And I look to see.
It's good writing.
I look to see what they do next.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else on our tangents of DC?
Yes. I'm done. What about you guys?
Yeah,
I'm all right. I think we got a nice DC discussion here.
Yeah. I'm just like, we could just keep going. Let's just keep.
We
going.
could.
Welcome to the Forever Podcast. We haven't stopped recording since yesterday morning.
There is no escape.
Connor actually fell asleep for a few hours while James and I just kept talking. Then he woke up and went right back into it.
Yeah.
But all right, Connor, man, where can people find you?
All right, so you can find me on, as mentioned before, I do a Superman podcast called Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. I do it with my co-host, Ray Zod, who's currently out for the count, unfortunately, but will be back next week to cover whatever happens to the Man of Tomorrow. And I am also on my Iron Fist podcast, Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist podcast. We should have a new episode coming out next week. So that's it. Thanks heaps, guys, for having me on again.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, I guess.
I've been looking to read that story, actually.
Yeah.
What happened to the Man of Tomorrow?
I need to reread it. And that's like when you posted on your Twitter about it, I was like, man, I haven't read it in so long that my first initial read for it, I didn't like it, but this was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was one of those stories that people just kept talking about so much that after a while it kind of turned me off from reading.
Isn't that an Alan Moore story?
Yeah.
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 I think personally, I haven't reread it yet, but I think it's Alan Moore's weakest Superman story. I think his other ones are much better. Especially for The Man Who Has Everything, which I think is like one of the greatest Superman stories ever told. I think it's much better than this. But yeah, no, if you guys reread it, make sure you send in some feedback because we'd love to discuss.
I'll try to see if I can reread it this week, within maybe Tuesday.
Yeah,
it's on my list. I actually wanted to read it before that's one of the ones I wanted to read before the debate as well. So I'm going to try and read that today.
Cool.
It's a couple of issues.
Yeah, it's 2 issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's not super long.
But all right, man. Sounds good. We look forward to hearing that episode. Please let us know when you guys can record it, and we'll definitely promote it because I think that's one that'll be an interesting point for a lot of people to listen to.
Yeah.
Because it is one of those Superman stories that people talk heavily about. So.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. And obviously I'll plug this and our Red Sun episode when we record as well.
We were talking about a little bit about Crisis and things like that. From what I heard, that what happened to the Man of Tomorrow was like an influence on the way that the Smallville story wrapped up in Crisis.
It was, yeah. I don't think you can really translate that to Smallville like they did. I don't think it works. But that's a discussion for another time, I'm sure. Because if we start
at least
there,
the idea of him like giving up his powers or something.
Yeah.
It's a canonical ending for Superman at some point.
Yeah.
Is kind of more or less what I gathered.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I won't go into it because we'll be here for another hour.
I was gonna say you got a whole episode coming out on it. So
yeah. Actually, well, it's good you brought that up because I wasn't thinking about Smallville, but I will mention the Smallville thing in relation to that story.
Yeah, that's the argument I've seen people like trying to like find comic justification for.
Yeah,
that story.
I mean, comic. Just because it happened in the comics, it doesn't mean it works for that version of the story. That's my opinion on it. I don't think that works in Smallville, whereas it can work for another story and another Superman. But yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, guys, let's get out of here and go save the world. And remember, our faithful listeners,
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky.
Look at the sky.